Welcome back inside TD Garden, everybody. My name is Mike Petraglia, joined as always by Celtics NBA writer for WEEI.com, Sam Packard. We watched the Celtics claim their second straight win over a lowly Eastern Conference foe, the Orlando Magic, the victim tonight, as the Celtics conquer them 107-96. It was a good win for the Celtics. They took care of business. It wasn't beautiful all the way through, but I think a couple of positive things, Sam. First of all, Kelly Olynyk certainly back to form in his fourth game back from a shoulder injury. He got rid of the black brace on his right shoulder, and in pregame I watched him shoot around. He looked much more comfortable, had a lot more arc under his shot. He finished with 22 points off the bench. Isaiah Thomas, another strong game. Overall, I think the Celtics got what they needed in this game, both from Kelly Olynyk and, again, Isaiah Thomas.
It was nice to see Kelly Olynyk get back to kind of being the aggressive player we know him to be when he's playing well. We saw him 4 or 6 from beyond the arc, and there was one play that he came down off a pin-down screen and immediately caught and shoot a three-pointer, and that's kind of what you want to see from Kelly Olynyk, because that's when he's really stretching the floor, and he really talked about the postgame finally getting that strength back in his shoulder so he can shoot, and that's what the Celtics are going to need to do moving forward, especially have that bench scoring. Because if you look at the box score, other than Olynyk, they only scored 3 points from their bench tonight.
You mentioned stretching the floor. The other thing Kelly Olynyk does, and all the Celtics that play with him will definitely tell you this, along with head coach Brad Stevens, he spaces the floor. Why is that such a big deal?
Because it draws the defenders out and actually allows Isaiah Thomas, who was magnificent tonight, to have space in the paint to kind of just create and play make. And not just Isaiah Thomas, but players like Avery Bradley and Evan Turner. It just allows them more room to operate, and the defenders actually have to honor him on the three-point line, and it just makes it easier for the guards to penetrate and kick, which is mostly what this Celtics offense is built upon.
One thing I had a chance to ask Brad Stevens about after the game was the fact that Isaiah Thomas in the last 2 nights has gotten back to the free throw line. This is something during the 4-game losing streak Isaiah and the rest of the team, for that matter, really we're not doing a good job of, and that is getting some easy looks, meaning, getting to the free throw line and really getting into the paint. But the last couple of games, Isaiah Thomas, 10 for 10 against the Sixers, 10 for 12 from the free throw line against the Orlando Magic. That's a big deal, I think.
Well, that's huge. It slows down the game. It gets the other team in foul trouble, and it's easy points. And we see Isaiah when he has his large scoring totals. Mm-hmm. He's going to get around 10 made free throws. So when he's shooting that efficiently, there's really nothing the Magic could do to stop him tonight.
All right. Those are the positives. I think the negative we have to continue to focus on is Marcus Smart. Not that he doesn't play hard, not that he doesn't bring it on the defensive end, but he was 1 of 11, Sam, from the field again.
Not only 1-11, but 0 for 5 from three-point line, and it's just a continued struggle. He had that high, he was playing really great after that snow day practice, but ever since really he's gotten all this talk about him flopping, and that's kind of came into focus. His scoring has just dwindled, and it's I don't know if it's a mentality thing or his approach to the game, but he's really not doing well on any part of his offensive game.
I was going to say, do you think it's gotten into his head at all? Because sometimes you would see maybe a fall off or a creeping in to other parts of his game when that starts to happen. I wouldn't necessarily say I've seen a drop off in his defensive production. I think he is just as good defensively as he has been all season long. It's just for whatever reason the shots are not falling.
I can't say there's a direct correlation, but you can definitely see that he's super frustrated with the refs. There was a point tonight where he picked up a kind of iffy foul on a box out, and you saw him run back to the bench where he really didn't want to say anything. And there's a number of times where he wanted to draw the foul when he's going to the basket. So that can be frustrating for him, and that's where we need to see him improve his offensive game, is really going to the basket. And if he feels he's not going to get those foul calls, that's going to make him kind of stay beyond the arc.
Now, before the game, Brad Stevens talked about the production of the younger part of his bench. A lot of the guys like James Young, Terry Rozier, who's been getting a lot of playing time, Jordan Mickey, those R.J. Hunter, those kind of guys, and even Cody Clark. And he said that he's been very happy with them. But I went down midway through the first quarter, and the Celtics were doing very well, and all of a sudden the second unit went in, and all of a sudden the Orlando Magic made a big run. And I came back up, and you told me this team has to have a bench that scores, and it can't be all starters. Even with Kelly Olynyk scoring the 22 points tonight, is there some concern on your part for this team's bench?
I think short term, absolutely. Not having Jay Crowder is going to be a big problem, because that forces Evan Turner into the starting lineup, and then that second unit doesn't really have a playmaker or a facilitator.
And Marcus isn't making shots.
Absolutely, and then we saw Terry Rozier. He had 14 minutes tonight, and he's a great athlete. He can rebound, but he's really not at the point in his career where he's going to be your primary playmaker. I think he only attempted 2 shots tonight. That's just not who he is yet. So with Evan Turner starting and Jay Crowder out, that second unit really doesn't have ability to create their own shots. And we saw it at the start of the second quarter where the Magic were able to get back in the game. And then in the start of the fourth quarter where the Celtics built up a 14-point lead, they let it get down all the way to 6 or I think actually 4 in the final couple of minutes.
Right.
And that's going to be a problem moving forward. So you kind of hope that Jay Crowder's going to be able to make it back sooner rather than later.
Well, moving forward, speaking of looking ahead, the Toronto Raptors, a team the Celtics have not beaten in 3 previous tries this season. They got one more shot at them, and a couple of Celtics in the locker room after this win tonight against the Magic were saying it's huge. Kelly Olynyk said beating the Raptors would be huge because if we face this team like we want to down the road after April 15th, we want to be able to say, yeah, we can handle this team. We showed it in the last meeting of the regular season.
And I think it's a big psychological hurdle because in the first 2 games they were kind of back and forth and it seemed like the Celtics had a chance. But then last weekend, the Raptors just absolutely wiped the floor with the Celtics. So even if you're going to want the Celtics to win, but even if it's close, I think that'll be good for the psychology of the Celtics heading into the playoffs. And hopefully if you do play the Raptors in the second round of the playoffs, you're going to have some good memories to lean on so you can believe you actually can win.
And you would think this time around, Sam, that the Celtics will be ready for one Luis Scola in the first quarter. 2 games ago, Scola had 13 points in a Raptors win. Friday night, everybody remembers what Scola did up at Air Canada Center. 17 first quarter points. The Raptors raced out to a 20-point lead. Celtics got it back into the game, but really were never able to recover. I think it is a big deal on Wednesday night, Sam.
I think it's going to be the biggest game of the season so far because it's kind of their litmus test of whether or not they're actually a contender because the Raptors are actually pushing the Cavs right now. They're only 1 game back heading into the night. So it's really a test of whether or not the Celtics belong in the top tier of the Eastern Conference or whether they belong in the middle tier with the teams like the Hawks and the Hornets.
Not to mention the fact that this team, after playing the Raptors, goes out west to play a 5-game road trip. A couple of those games are clearly games they should win at the Lakers, at the Suns, but then there's teams like Golden State and Portland that they're going to have to contend with. So it'll be a very interesting week and a half for this team. They beat the Orlando Magic here at TD Garden. They pick up their 41st win of the year. That's 1 more than they had all of last year when the Celtics went 40-42 and qualified for the playoffs. Expectations are a little bit higher this time around as the Celtics improved to 41-30 on the season. Inside TD Garden, he is Sam Packard. I'm Mike Petraglia, WEEI.com.